Welcome to Accessibility Now, a podcast produced by the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. I'm Matt Shedd. Today I'm speaking with Victor McRae, the Housing Policy Coordinator for our organization. Victor grew up in Smyrna and began losing his vision at a young age, a journey that eventually led him to become an advocate for accessible, affordable housing. In this conversation, he shares how his experiences shaped his passion for addressing housing disparities across Georgia, and he offers insight into what each of us can do to help create a more inclusive community. All right, here's Victor. So why don't you just start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, of course. Well, my name is Victor McRae. I am Georgia-born, Georgia native. Grew up in Smyrna with a fantastic family, two parents and a brother, and just a normal suburban life until around the age of 9, when my vision started to decrease slightly. So it took some time to actually realize it. I was able to figure out or at least I should say my mother was able to figure out something was wrong, and I just kept inching closer and closer to the TV. And once basically I was right up on it, she decided to take me on down to the hospital and to get an expert to look on over. They discovered that I had an eye disease called Stargardt's. And with that, it's a juvenile macular degeneration disease. So slowly but surely, my normal eyes, quote unquote, ended up depreciating and to around 2200. So near the point of being legally blind and slightly over. So with that, I'm not able to drive and I'm not able to do a couple things like not kick the coffee table when I walk past it. But I'm able to get around without any navigational aids. So, there's pros and cons to my situation, but I look at it more as a pro because it gives me that little spice of life where other people don't get it. After that, regular old high school experience, went to Georgia Southern and studied both marketing and management. And after school, I jumped around to a few jobs until I found, the accessibility space and saw that people really needed more assistance, especially here in Georgia, I should say. So I joined a non-emergency medical transportation company as a travel trainer. And after that, I was able to assist fellow people who were seniors, people with disabilities, utilize public transportation to get to their doctor's appointments. After that, I was able to find the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia as their housing policy coordinator. And in this role, I'm able to assist the people of Georgia by advocating and really addressing the issues that the disability community faces when it comes to their housing. So that's a long story, cut short to some degree. So there you are, Matt.
Well, thank you. That's really helpful context for us to understand where you're coming from and kind of a little bit about your history. With your loss of sight, have you found yourself in the position where you've had to advocate quite a bit for yourself over the years?
To be quite candid, for a long time, I tried my best to ignore it. And, it probably isn't the healthiest way to deal with it. I was very uncomfortable when it was brought up as a child. And so really, I was so close enough without using a navigational aid to pass as, like I was saying, quote, normal, which is completely ridiculous, but it was the fancy of a child at that point. And so for the longest time, I would keep it basically a dark secret that I tried my best not to tell people about. So back in school, I would do my best to, I was almost illiterate because I didn't want to show people I had to get so close to the paper to read. To some degree, I tried my best to ignore it. And that's kind of the largest changes that I've ever had to deal with. But no, I have been able to meet a lot of other visually impaired people and blind people. And I see that, the path they walk is much more difficult than mine. It was able to humble me quite a lot. So seeing those situations really kind of opened my eyes, for lack of a better term.
Gotcha. So, do you what let's shift to talking about this role a little bit. Like, what did you have any sort of experience, like looking at housing disparities for people with disabilities before this role? Or is this kind of a whole new area that you've been learning about over the past several months?
Mix of both, but I'd say probably closer to the latter there, my friend. I got the chance as a travel trainer. In that role, I was able to, a person would call on and say, I'm interested in the program. I would kind of conduct a bit of a survey via the phone and then meet at their house and then conduct a site survey. So with that site survey, I'm observing, how far away are they from the bus stop, from the train station? Are there any obstacles going to be in their path? And, in that case, a lot of the time I got to see the state of their homes. And quite often or not, a lot of the people calling in were calling from, Section 8 housing, and they were calling in from, apartment buildings that had not been renovated in quite a long time. And, these people are on SSI, and they're just looking for an alternative way at that point in time to get to their doctor's appointments. So, that was one of the instances that really opened my eyes to the disparity that is there when it comes to the disability community and their housing situation, as well as their housing needs. And after I left that organization, I was able to, this opportunity came along after a mutual friend of ours, Jordan, had mentioned this role. And I said, that is something I can really throw myself into and get behind. And, being able to fight and advocate at a legislative level, as well as working with Georgia developers to increase accessible and affordable housing, that is something that I can really get into and have some passion about. So it kind of all just worked out from there.
Oh, wow. That's really interesting that you got kind of that firsthand experience being in people's homes that way. And now you get to kind of take the bigger macro view of this and think creatively about how to solve some of these issues. You mentioned that you're working on a report right now. Can you tell us a little bit about what that report is and who it's for and kind of what you're pointing out in it?
Heck yeah, I'd be happy to, my friends. So the report is going to be titled Access for All. And it's really citing a few key issues that are going on here in Georgia. It's citing the difference with income between, people, the disability community and everybody else. It's citing the access to housing and programs that are there for us. And though these programs have been doing fantastic things like the housing choice voucher, the House Proud Atlanta movements, there's some other ones, whole inclusion. These are some great organizations, but at the same time, it's a drop in the bucket. There's so many people in Georgia alone. There's 12.9% as of 2018, I believe. People have disabilities here in Georgia. That is a large number of constituents that are not being ignored, but definitely not getting the resources they need from the state. So the goal of this report is to kind of compile all this information together and basically make recommendations, policy recommendations to our state legislators when the Statewide Independent Living Center of Georgia and other great SILs in the area go to Washington, D.C. and march on the Capitol. Our goal is to meet with our Georgia representatives and show them the data. And that's the goal of this report. We just want to get the data right in front of them so they can easily see these are real problems that Georgians are facing. Not even Georgians, just the country in general. But it is definitely here. And we need to take a very long look at it because the housing choice voucher, LIHTC funding, developments, that only goes so far, sadly. It's a fantastic program, like I was saying, but we need more.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was kind of along those lines. Are there things that you see that give you hope and encouragement that we're moving in the right direction, or things that maybe you look at on a bad day when you feel like overwhelmed at the the distance we have to go that show, okay, well, at least we've got things moving in the right direction in these areas?
Well, that's a great question. And there's a few things like that I could mention. One being full inclusion. That is a new nonprofit being started that's focusing on trying to assist the IDD community specifically. And that's going to try to make more community with their housing. So they're trying to fund a project right now to work with the development to give them 6 rooms subsidized by the Housing Choice Voucher Program. And in that case, they would, help integrate those IDD individuals, newly turned adults, into their community, give them a safe and respectful place to live, and, really kind of foster friendship and community. As 5 years at a time is the goal. And that was all started by a wonderful woman named E. Trudy, Miss E. Trudy, I should say. And it's because, her daughter is an individual with IDD. And she saw the fantastic programs that the college did for her daughter and said, why don't we have that here in Georgia? Things like that where, individuals who, notice something, they can make a change. And yes, it's going to be a lot of work. It always is for such a big change like that. But you can really start a movement if you have the drive and the desire to do so. And one other thing I will add, there's a lot of stigma around people with disabilities and people who are homeless. It's sad to say, but there is a correlation there. And it's due to, a plethora of issues. And it's always so sad to see, people just straight up ignoring people who are down on their luck. I see it all the time when I'm going into work, off the work, because I can't drive. I use public transportation. So, just opening your mind up, opening your heart up, being able to listen to someone for a long time, or at least if you've got a spare minute before work, that can go a long way to assisting community in Georgia as well. And just being a little bit more understanding is something that I highly recommend.
That's great. If there's one thing, this will be my last question, but if there's one thing that you could, would like to impress upon listeners about housing in Georgia, what would it be?
That's a great point. And my one thing is, housing is going to keep going up, at least for the immediate future. I won't say I'm an investor. I'm not an investor, so don't take my advice. But at the same time, inflation is increasing here, and it costs more to develop more properties. It sincerely does. And that is not ideal for the disability community, or just really any community who are looking for affordable housing, because it's really not going to be here for a long time. So my one recommendation would be to reach out to your representatives, reach out to the people you are putting your vote behind, and impress upon them that we need more assistance here. It's not just the disability community, it is everybody. Because if it keeps on this trajectory, no one is going to be able to buy a house. You might have a 2-family working household and been at it for 10 years, and it's still going to be almost impossible if we keep on this road, keep on this track. So that is something that I want to impress upon the audience. Your voice does matter, and we vote our legislation and for the exact points of representing ourselves, Georgians' interests. And this is something that we all need to address right now. So that is my one piece of advice, if I could give us.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Victor. I really appreciate you taking the time to share about your life and your work, and just, to hear about housing disparities that you're looking at in your work. So thank you.
Well, it means so much to have me on here, Matt. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Accessibility Now, a podcast produced by the Statewide Independent Living Council of Georgia. I'm Matt Shedd, reminding you that a Georgia that includes everyone is better for all of us.